Good afternoon. We are living in Novueval times, and I am running for president, Matt, MET 2024. This is Living in Novueval Times, episode 13, and as such, since 13 is a lucky number, I thought I would go over all of the circumstances that we are up against that possibly spell the demise of modern civilization. Widespread societal collapse that we face. So I'm just going to list them uh, basically in the order that I deem them most relevant in terms of how they're going to impact us, the most significant down to the least significant. So I'll just rattle them off. We've got climate change, which we're seeing in terms of extreme weather. Uh, so we're seeing weather that is just stopping whole communities completely, putting people out on the streets, causing power outages, and yeah, we've always had a little bit of that. I mean, we've always had weather. We're always going to. It's something we have to deal with. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. It's getting worse all the time. And let me just start this right off because there are going to be a lot of people who every single thing that I list that we are already going through, that we are already seeing the effects of, there are going to be people saying, oh, we've always had to deal with that. It's going to go away just like it always did. Uh, if that's how you really feel about it, it's probably better off you just didn't watch this because you're just going to continually be upset throughout the whole thing. And I didn't make this to just trigger people. If you're triggered by statements like these, that we're up against some really tough times, they're only going to get tougher, and we've got to come up with ways to deal with them. You're better off just turning this off and going elsewhere because there's plenty of other things to get upset about on the internet. You don't need to stay here and be upset. So hopefully I cleared out a bunch of people right there. Yeah, we're seeing more and more extreme weather, and it's only going to continue to get more extreme, get worse, more power outages. It's just going to escalate and accelerate. And yeah, it'll get worse in any particular spot, and then get better, and you'll have a devastating tornado or hurricane or wildfire or whatever, displace a whole community, and FEMA has to come in. People have to make contributions. Everything's in an uproar, and then things settle down because that's the way weather works. But you're going to see more and more and more of that all over the place, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with that as communities because we can't rely on government. We know that. And that will be a continual theme throughout this, that everything that I list, all of the circumstances and situations that we are going to be up against, you cannot rely on government to help you. Yeah, you can rely on government in the short term for some material stuff to help you, but overall, government is one of the institutions that actually put us in this situation. They are not going to strive to change how they do things to make the situation better. They're going to continue to do things even worse than they've already done them and exacerbate the situation. That's how governments work. It's nothing unique about American government. It's just how governments work. Get used to it. So, we've got climate change. And before I go any farther, I would like to say this is geared towards getting like-minded people, people that at least accept that what I have to say is a possibility, that this is the direction we're going, and we should start thinking in terms of how are we going to deal with it. I'm not throwing this stuff out as uh, any of these things are something that we need to freak out about. It is what it is. It is our reality now. What I'm trying to do actually is to instill a sense of calm acceptance that okay, this is what we have to deal with now. How do we go about best dealing with that? What are best practices? And for me, and I hope for others, it is merely a matter of developing the mentality that can deal with this without undue stress, without panic and hysteria, because there's going to be plenty of that out there with everybody else. The more people who don't exhibit that kind of behavior, the better off we'll all be. So, calm acceptance. Are the these are the situations and circumstances we now have to deal with. It doesn't matter how we got here. The why doesn't matter. How we respond to it is the important thing, because there will be plenty of time in the future to parse out what exactly went wrong, where, to try to spend a lot of time philosophizing about that now is really not that important, just accepting that these are our circumstances. What do we do? It's like if you get a flat tire, you don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what happened. Was it a nail? Was it a screw? Are the treads worn down so low that it doesn't matter why the tire is flat. It's flat. You need to change it. You need to put a good tire on and move on down the road. Once it's in the trunk and you take it somewhere to get another tire put on, you can figure out what happened then. You got a flat. Now is not the time to be concerned about how it got that way. Now is the time to fix it. So that is the mindset that I am trying to develop. Here we are. How do I deal with this? So I'm doing that. Building a community. As I said, government is not going to be there for us. We got to do this ourselves. And that means local people of a similar thought process who are willing to work with you. You gotta ferret out those people and start to develop a community. People who are willing to help each other, watch each other's back, because times are going to get hard. And when times get hard, a lot of people get stupid. And you don't want to be around those people, and you don't want those people coming towards you. So the more people you have that are thinking like you are and preparing and willing to do what it takes to keep the bad seeds away, the better off you'll be. So find people who understand what you're thinking, why and how you want to prepare, and want to work with you. And they're not going to get upset or panic or fall into a state of hysteria because you're developing this capacity for calm acceptance. I think that's most important. And last on the list, get as physically fit as you can. Uh, I think it's important, but I don't think it's as important as making sure your psychology is balanced, making sure you've got other people who are thinking the same way you are. But certainly being physically fit is important also, and that means if you're a couch potato and you're out of shape, just starting today. What do I do? Get up and start being active in any way that you can, whether it's walking around the block, taking a bike ride, swimming, doing whatever you like to do and have the resources for. Just start doing that. Start doing as much of it as you can every day. And by as much of it, I mean, if you're just starting and you can only put your shoes by the door, then put your shoes by the door, because tomorrow you want to put them on and step outside. And the next day you want to walk to the end of the driveway and come back. And then you want to walk around the block. And, you know, start very small and work your way up. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that, but I have read a whole bunch of books on, well, read books, articles, watched videos about building habits. And it's a hard process, but there is another thing. Start to develop a mindset where you're willing to do hard things, knowing, and this is another thing also, knowing it's part of a growth mindset, knowing that the more you tackle hard things, even at a very small scale, the easier it becomes to do hard things. And the more of them you do, the more you realize hard things are always going to be hard, but just getting started is going to become easier as you just develop this habit of, I'm just going to get started. So, doing that. And I know I have already strayed quite a ways from the list that I was going to make about what is leading us down this path to widespread societal collapse. But to just say widespread societal collapse and leave it at that uh, leaves everybody with the impression that it's all doom and gloom that I'm trying to give you, and horror and havoc and chaos and confusion, and oh my God, what are we going to do? And to me, yeah, a lot of people are going to experience that, but we don't have to. Regardless of what the others are doing, we can keep our heads. We can deal with the fact that, yeah, this is the way the world is now. This is what I have to do to get through the day, and just accept that and deal with it. Um, if you want to look at it with horror and confusion and anger and all of the negative emotions, be stressed out about it. Whatever's coming down the pike, that's the reality. To be upset, to be anything other than, okay, this is what's happening, the why doesn't matter, how do I respond to it, to be anything other than that is not at all helpful. You can always, on the other side, once you've gotten through it, look back and say, okay, what happened? How do we avoid that next time? Right now, we're in the midst of it. And to say, oh my God, how did things get this way? This is wrong. I need to force my mindset on other people and change everything. You need to change yourself. You need to prepare. You need to respond. Anything other than that is self-destructive. Don't engage in that. There are going to be plenty of other people out there doing that. Let them do that. Let them take the brunt of the stress and the chaos and the mortal fear and everything else that anyone can go through if that's what they choose. You can choose not to go through that. And that is the whole spirit of response that I am trying to instill in others, because I want those kind of people around me. I want to be there, and I want those kind of people around me, because the freaks and all of the people that want to engage in hysteria and panic and uh, seek revenge, find somebody to blame and resort to violence and all of that stuff, that's not going to help. None of that is going to help. And that's what I'm trying to avoid in my life. And I have to find people who think like I do, and that's not going to be easy because a lot of people are not there, and even if they're aware of where there is, they're not trying to get there. It's hard work, and they want to avoid that because, and here is another thing, that's not the American way. The American way is not to engage in hard work, which changes one's identity in order to gain a higher quality of life. And by quality of life, I mean a certain mindset, not material stuff, a certain mindset, a peace of mind, a willingness to accept reality, a tolerance for all the things out there that are not comfortable, instead of just seeking comfort and trying to have an easy life. Something Bruce Lee said sums it up best for me, and that is, do not pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a hard life. And that is what I am doing. And it's not really prayer, because that is just totally passive, and you're hardly going to get the kind of results you are seeking through mere prayer, especially for something like this. Um, it is a series of practices that I am engaged in, and it's hard. It's hard because it is sloughing off cultural conditioning, which is hard to do because that's what we've been immersed in since day one. So, you know, give me a child for the first 7 years, and I will give you the man. What we've learned at the very beginning of our life is what is shaping us as adults, and to go back and dig out the bad stuff from that and discard it is a very hard practice. It is very difficult to do, and that's what I'm engaged in, and plenty of others also, because I didn't come up with this myself. There are a whole slew of people that I have seen and read uh, that have taught me how to go about this. And it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. So, yes, do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a hard one. That is where I want to be. That is the kind of mindset that I'm looking for in others to develop a community. So when TSHTF, we're ready. I'll leave it up to you how you want to prepare, if you want to prepare. And, if you want to deny all this, that's fine. Maybe you just want to find a community of screaming, angry, intolerant assholes to hang around. There's plenty of them out there. You don't have to look very far. And as times get harder, there are going to be more of them. So it's going to be even easier to find people like that. For me, I'm trying to stay away from people like that. I'm trying to avoid them at all costs. And that in itself is difficult, but I'm getting better at it. Let me continue on with the list. We started with climate change. Now we come into the really fun one. And let me just preface this by saying, in terms of climate change and this next one, they weren't really factored in. But there was an MIT study back in 1972. It was one of the first, if not the first, computer study of this nature, where they took a bunch of variables and created a model and endeavored to see what's going to happen. And what they came up with the factors that they put into their model was that there would be widespread societal collapse by 2040. And you can read all about that. It's out there. As a matter of fact, it was just recently revisited by an academic who wanted to find out, well, we've got a few decades of data now. How close is it? And she came up with, yeah, we're right on track, right around 2040, somewhere in there. We're looking at widespread societal collapse. So make of that what you will. I definitely foresee, given what we've got, going on and how it's escalating and accelerating. Yeah, things are bad. They're only going to get worse. And again, I'm not saying that to try and create some end of the world fiction. I'm saying we're coming up against some pretty hard times. What are you going to do about it? There are choices here. There are choices. But EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, we now know also that going back to the 70s, we've got all kinds of data showing that sperm counts have declined by 50% over the last 5 decades. So uh, it's about 8% a year. So if it continues in this fashion, 50 years from now, if we're even having children anymore, the sperm count is going to be at zero. Wow. I don't think it's going to get there because I think there will be widespread societal collapse, and the endocrine disrupting chemicals that what we call capitalism is creating so much of will have failed by that time. And there will be people of a mindset of, okay, it's no longer about iPhones and Nike shoes and all this other stuff. It's about air, water, food, and how do we clean up the environment and how do we get carbon out of the atmosphere. And just when industry starts to decline, right then you're going to see the endocrine disrupting chemicals start to go down. Not necessarily in the environment, but at least the amount that we make will start to diminish. And sooner or later, we're just not going to be making any anymore because that takes a lot of labor and energy and all kinds of stuff that we just can't afford to put into commercialism because we just don't have it. We don't have the labor. We don't have the energy to spend on making Teflon pots and pans and makeup and all this other stuff that is polluting our environments. Somewhere around 2036, I'm thinking October 3rd in the early afternoon, the population worldwide will start to decline. It's already starting to flatten out. It's getting to a point where we are no longer having as many children, and part of that is by choice, but part of that is by EDCs. The very thing that the right is so adamantly against testosterone levels going down, people having less babies. These things that the right are so freakishly obsessed about, these are being caused by this form of capitalism that we practice, which is not really capitalism. Let's be honest. It's Kafoa Eswek. It's a carnival freak show of an economic system we euphemistically call capitalism, but it's not capitalism. Uh, yeah, it's a very corrupt, perverse form of capitalism, but it's not capitalism in the way we mean it when we talk about free market capitalism. That is, if we ever had that to begin with, way behind us. But capitalism will go away. For one thing, we're not going to be making capital. When there's widespread societal collapse, the mint is not going to be churning out dollars anymore because why would you make something that is worthless? You wouldn't. But before anybody starts to freak out about the economy, that's the least of our worries, in my opinion. That may change at any moment, and certainly that's going to be a factor. But as I said already, climate change, EDCs, all the other pollutants in the environment that threaten our health, be it known, just wouldn't you know it, during Trump's term, during that chaotic, confused mess that we call a presidency, but during his term, American lifespans started to decline. Yeah, it's par for the course, and par for the course is par for the course because all the fucking fat ass did was play golf and tweet. Um, that is when he wasn't fucking everything up. But let's leave politics mostly out of this. It's not important as all the other external variables we have to deal with. But yeah, we're talking about climate change. We're talking about EDCs and other forms of pollution which are threatening us as a species. Uh, and speaking of species, we are in the midst of the sixth great species extermination. And that is definitely going to affect humanity because we're a part of nature. It's all tied in together. And when it gets too far out of balance, all the species suffer. All the larger species, anyways. The microbiome, well, we can decimate huge amounts of that, and that will come back relatively quickly. Uh, but that's not the part we're interested in. You don't go to a zoo, you don't go on safari, you don't go to SeaWorld, whatever, to look at the microbiome. We're looking at the animals that are most like us, at least in size and complexity. And we're just killing those off. It's just so sad to even talk about. But plenty of information out there. I don't need to go over that. If if you just don't understand how nature works and you think that we can pave over all of Earth and just put Walmarts every few miles and that's going to be just fine and dandy, no, you start to kill enough species off, and all of a sudden it starts to affect us. It is really complex. I would learn about it, but just in terms of, and this is going into food shortage, but just in terms of what we're doing to the topsoil, the monoculture that we're practicing, and especially the GMOs. And yeah, GMOs are bad. And for any scientist who said, "Oh, we've been practicing GMO for millennia now, ever since there was agriculture," no, selective breeding is not the same as genetically modified organisms. If you're doing it in the field, it's selective breeding. If you're doing it in the lab, it's a genetically modified organism. The two are different. And we knew before we even started to engage in GMO that monoculture was bad, that rotating crops, leaving fields fallow, these were very necessary things to maintain the health of the topsoil. We already had the Dust Bowl. We don't need another Dust Bowl to know monoculture is bad. And yet, what are we engaged in? Monoculture. And we're escalating our dependence on that. And oh my God, we're already experiencing food shortages because of transport problems and climate change, extreme weather. California, which supplies much of the country's vegetables and nuts, wildfires, drought. Things are just getting crazy climate wise, no matter what the deniers want you to believe. But this is starting to affect the shelves in our grocery stores. And it's only going to get worse because it's not just California, it's the Midwest and it's other countries. And they're experiencing the same thing we are, and even worse in some places because the climate doesn't change the same way worldwide. It gets worse in some places and not as bad in others. Um, and we're basically just learning about that now. I mean, we've got a whole slew of information to back that up, but we're learning more about it all the time. And of course, as the climate changes, we're just going to continue to learn more because we've only got the models of what has happened in the past to try to predict the future, but we don't know all the variables all of the time. There's always going to be surprises. But that is basically the sum total of, well, food shortages. We're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see a lot of transportation problems. We're going to see a lot of problems in terms of well, power outages. So that's going to affect our information, which in some ways is going to be good, in other ways is going to be bad. The whole information and technology issue, topic, whatever you want to call it, is a whole library in and of itself. That's if you think you're going to learn about that in any video, you're not. It's oodles and oodles and oodles of information, and we are finding out more about it all the time. But I think it can be summed up very easily. The more information we have, the less informed we actually are, and that is what we're up against. But when it comes to things like algorithms that they don't even know how they work, uh, because they design these things, they put them out in the wild, and all of a sudden they're doing something that's like, well, we didn't predict that. What's going on? But just the amount of information and also what that's doing to the climate, everything that we do, everything on YouTube, every click, that's adding carbon. So the unfortunately, more people that watch this, the more I am, in fact, contributing to the whole mess, the waste of bandwidth that future generations are going to look back and say, really? That's what you guys were focused on? That's what you were wasting time and energy on? That's what you were polluting our world with? You were talking about potato heads and children's books and how many genders there are and who uses what bathroom, and this is what you guys were focused on? Couldn't you see that you were heading towards your own extinction while you were arguing about this stupid shit? Future generations are going to look at us like we are total fucking idiots, and with good reason, because we're total fucking idiots. But you don't have to be a total fucking idiot. Change how you think, develop a community, get fit, be willing to do hard things, even embrace them. Look forward to doing them. And I'm not saying I'm there yet, but I'm getting closer all the time. It's a lot of work. You're not just going to tell yourself, well, tomorrow when I wake up, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and all of a sudden you're going to be a different person with a new identity, and you've got the S on your chest, and yeah, it doesn't work that way. You're going to try, and you're going to fail, and you're going to try, and you're going to fail, and you're going to try, and you're going to fail. At least that's how it's working with me. But if it's worthwhile, you're going to keep trying until you get it right. And, when it's something like, I want to exercise, or I want to exercise more, something like that, which really doesn't cost any money. It only costs time, energy, and effort. You're going to keep trying till you succeed, or you're just going to give up and be upset with yourself. The choice is yours. I'm going to try till I succeed. It's hard, and I'm getting better at it, but even that is incremental and frustrating. But developing developing a higher level of frustration is part of my process too. I used to have a very low level of frustration before. It's just like, I can't deal with this. It hurts my head too much. Anymore, it's like, yeah, okay, this isn't going the way I wanted it to. I'm frustrated. I need to stop being frustrated and just continue on. it's hard to get there. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of days, but it's worth it. To me, it is. If it's not worth it to you, you can continue to be mentally lazy. You can continue to be upset with how things are going. And as things change and get worse, you can either accept that and deal with it, respond to it in a reasonable fashion, or you can say, ah, this shouldn't be like this, and be angry and not deal with it. And hey, maybe some people will help you in your hour of need. Probably not. I don't care. It's up to you. I'm looking for people who think like me. Maybe don't behave the way I want them to behave per the way I want to behave, but are working towards that end. That's the important thing. So I will end this by saying I thank you for watching, and if you didn't watch, well then what's wrong with you, man? And remember, growth is rebellion. They want you to stay small. In order for them to succeed, they need your complicity. And summer is coming. This one will be long. Gird your loins. Thank you for watching.